Well, everybody, welcome to the Salt Talk with Jermine Alberty, where we speak truth, seasoned with compassion, powered by service, affirmation, love, and transformation. I am your host, Jermaine Alberty, and today's conversation is one that we believe can bring light, healing, and awareness to families, communities, and especially to our young people. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and we are diving into a timely and urgent topic, depression among African American teens. And I'm so excited and so happy that my friend and my colleague and my co-author, Rose Jackson-Beavers, is joining us to talk about our book, Bottle Up Inside, African American Teens and Depression. So, Rose, welcome to the Salt Talk.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here and especially with you today.
Yes, 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 yes. We always talk about what we hope to be able to get together and do and life be happening. And so I'm so glad this time we made it happen. And so
Yes.
it's so good to see you. I have a question because I remember when you told me about the book Bottle Up Inside, and we was having this conversation, and then you said, you know what? I'm gonna put out a second edition of this book. I think we should do it together. Um, but I want to know what inspired you to write this book in the first place. What was the inspiration behind it?
I started writing this book probably in 2000.
Mm,
I've been working with young people for years,
hmm.
and for some reason, I just always drew to young people. And I did a focus group, showed the book to a group of young people, and we went through it. They was like, yeah, yeah, you need to write this, you need to write this. So I put it together and I never really put a jump in it. And then I
Hmm.
met you. When I met you and I showed you the concept of the book, showed it to you and you read it and you came up with some even more better ideas. And I was like, I really wanted to do it with you because it was just something about you and your message. I thought that would just really strengthen it and make it even better. I just felt more confident that with you being a part of it, it would just make it even better than it was at that particular time. But I really wanted to just do something to give young people the strength that they needed at that time. I felt that would just make them feel more powerful, to just be able to speak for themselves, something that would make them feel that they could survive what they were going through at that time. And I felt like you would be the person that would help
Hmm.
me get that across to young people.
Well, first of all, I'm so honored that you thought of me and chose me to co-write this with you. And um, I was just having and I thought that this year will be 10 years from the time my son had his first attempt at suicide, almost a decade later.
Um,
And he is turning 27 years old. And I have worked with mothers and fathers who've lost their children to suicide. And every birthday, they go to a cemetery and they lay flowers and they put balloons and gifts at the site of their child. And I remember doing a support group for parents whose children who died by suicide. And I said, I have survivor's guilt because my
mhm,
son is still here and yours is not. And they said, please just keep doing what you're doing to raise awareness so no other parent has to experience what we experienced.
mhm,
And that gave me some sense of, one gratefulness that yes, my son was still with me, but the importance of this work that we keep talking about depression and suicide, anxiety, and all these things. So folks don't feel like they can't have this very important conversation.
mhm,
And a reason why I think it's important to have that conversation is because there are a lot of young people who have dreams and ambitions and have goals, and often they feel stuck. And when they get stuck, they get depressed. And because they feel like life ain't moving as fast as they want it to move, and they feel like life is just, not they're not accomplishing in life what they want to accomplish. And I think by shining a light on depression, not as a diagnosis, but just as an emotion that we all feel,
Mhm.
and that
Mhm.
can become a diagnosis is really important. And so my question I have is, I remember us talking about how silence often surrounds mental health in Black communities. And doing that, I think this book really has helped many people to have a platform for a conversation about depression in young people. But also in the book, we also gave them some keys of what kind of action to take. So, what I want to ask you next is, from your perspective, what are some unique challenges that African American teens face when dealing with depression? Sometimes it's lack of accomplishment. Sometimes it's dealing with a parent that may be abusive or challenging. But what are the things that you think can be some unique challenges for African American teens?
People tell me put their chin up, stop complaining,
Hmm.
stop crying, be
Hmm.
strong. And especially with our young men, why are you crying? Stop crying. You're supposed to be a man, you don't cry, So they tell them to shoulder it up. And we're supposed to be able to teach our kids if something is bothering you, talk about it. Bottled up inside. The reason we named that book Bottled Up Inside is because we tell our kids to keep all this stuff inside. What you want them to do? Explode?
Hmm.
When we keep all this garbage and all this pain inside, it has nowhere to go but to eat them up inside. And so that is a challenge. I always tell kids, let that stuff out. I tell my daughter, her friends, talk about it. Nothing is too, let it go. Just bring all this stuff out. It's the same thing my mother used to always tell me growing up is get that stuff out. You know, Garbage in, garbage out. That's what I used to
Hmm.
always hear, and I talk that to my daughter, all my nieces, my nephews. We have to let that stuff go. That's how we get better. And so with their friends and stuff, talk to somebody. If your parents are there, talk to them. If they're not listening, go to your youth pastor, go to the school counselor, but you have to let it out because it's going to hurt inside. It will, like a bottle, like if you shake up a bottle and all the fizz is in there. Once you let that top off of it, everything is going to explode out. And we don't want that to happen. That's a challenge for our kids. Bullying, hurting others, that stuff comes out in bad forms when you don't let it go. And so that's a challenge for our kids. Um, when we tell our kids, we don't take our pain and our problems outside of our house.
Yes.
So when we keep it all inside, all that trauma stays inside and it explodes in the house. That's where you
Yeah.
find all this violence that happens in our home.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we have all this challenging things that happen in our homes. So we have to really teach our kids you know, to talk, to share, stop being judgmental to our kids. So, teach them to talk up, to communicate, to go for help, that it's okay to talk about it. So
Yeah.
that's a challenge. That's why kids take it out on themselves. That's why
Yeah.
kids take their life. What are you teaching them? If
Yeah.
they don't have nowhere to go, they don't have no outs. So suicide rates are really increasing in our community.
Yes. Well, I think what's really important is in the book, we talk about suicide in the book, and we define depression in the book. And so we are, in a very simplistic way, providing folks information, and particularly those who work with teens and even teens themselves, and from
Mhm.
just general information of how to recognize signs and symptoms and what to do. I know that a lot of the reasons why teens, especially Black teens, struggle in silence is those systemic pressures that they face, which often is rooted in racism and inequities, and then the cultural stigma that we have that you talked about.
Right.
If you're a young man, young men don't cry. They, young suck it up and those things right there. And another reason why a lot of folks are teens are dealing with depression is because sometimes in our community there is lack of access. And I never forget when you and I were working together on the Bridges to Care uh, program, and we was offering community free counseling sessions, and they wouldn't go in the community to get those sessions. They would go
Mm-hmm.
to Catholic Charities, which was miles from where they lived at, to
Mm-hmm.
get the therapy when there was clinics right there in the community. And
Yeah.
they told us they were going to go because they had mental health on the outside the building.
Uh-huh.
And so, the reality is sometimes it is lack of access to care, but sometimes it is that stigma is so strong they don't want to be looked at as broken or
Yeah.
weak or something of that nature. So when we talk about
Shame.
shame, oh yeah, absolutely
Mm-hmm.
shame.
Yeah.
When we talk about the metaphor bottle up inside, tell me what does that mean to you? Bottle
Mm-hmm.
for the young people. I know you talk about when they're shaking up and then the bottle is shaking and that carbonation causes it to flow over. Um, tell me more when you thought about that title, bottle up inside. What else was coming to mind when you thought about that title?
It was the stigma. It was
Mm,
the stigma that we have to deal with, the shame. I remember one time I was talking to some people in my church about, really talking to our young people, trying to have rap sessions with them. And I said, we need to bring some counseling, into our church. And this person who was of great means financially said, our kids don't need any counseling. They just need to pray.
mm,
Yeah, our kids
mm,
do need to pray, but God works through people too, our counselors, our therapists, and everything else. So all I felt was, shame, the stigma. Our kids can't even deal with our church. We need to bring, training into our church as well. So even in my church, if I try to get help in the church, I'm dealing with shame in the church. I'm
mhm,
dealing with
mhm,
stigma in the church. I'm dealing with if I come to the church for help, now it's a lack of faith. So I
mhm,
can't even get it there to bottle up inside.
mm,
Even inside of the church, I
mm.
have to deal with shame too. I can't even go to
Wow.
the place that I can rely on for help. So now outside, I got to come inside the church. The church is a place where I'm supposed to be able to get some extra help to.
Mhm, mhm,
My mother used to always say, the church is like a hospital. I can't even go in there to get the help that I need. Bottle up inside everywhere I go. In the
mm,
community, there's shame there. I can't even get help there because if I go into the community help center, people gonna laugh at me if they see me go into that building. I gotta go way out somewhere else to get help. I'm just all tied up.
mm,
I'm
mm,
just all wrapped
mm.
up in pain and I don't know where to go. So I'm just bottled up, not only with
Wow.
shame, with pain. I have nothing, no help,
Mm,
no support. I don't have any access to anything. I'm just
mm.
bottled up with all of this mess. And so
What?
that's where all of it
Well,
came
and you
from.
talked about that shame, which is so significant of why folks don't get help.
Hmm.
And you mentioned faith, and it's almost like you have my notes in front of you, and I know you don't, but you gave me a good
Hmm.
segue because you talked about several things, and that's faith, family, and even freedom.
Hmm.
And what we know is that faith plays a major role in many African American communities, and yet a reason why folks don't get help is because there are so many myths and misunderstandings and a harmful message that are conveyed in the church. And you mentioned that you had retired recently. And I know the work that you and I both did in working with faith communities and trying to get them equipped to be able to serve individuals with mental health challenges. Um, what were some of the harmful messages that you encountered when you was trying to educate faith communities about mental health?
Basically, all these people need to do is just pray.
Hmm.
We don't need that here at our church.
Yeah.
you know, uh, but I will say that we were able to get in a lot of them because people
Yes.
knew what needed to be done.
Yeah.
We had a lot of pastors who were very open to it because a lot of people were going through it. We had a lot of pastors who had seniors who were lonely who was going through it. And I
Hmm.
think that uh, a lot of people were taking their lives.
Hmm.
African Americans uh, we were at a stage, I think, where suicide was on the rise in our community, and a lot of
Yes.
people were going to church. So answers needed to be
Hmm.
we need to look into what was going on. So I think that people were beginning to be more open. Uh,
Hmm.
I don't think we did research to see why so many pastors were opening doors and many others weren't, because
Yeah.
we did see some were more open to having this kind of training in the church. Others still would not open the doors. But before I retired, we were able to train 134 churches in our
Wow.
communities
Wow.
who were, and still, because even though I retired, I'm still training um, probably 3 to 4 churches a month who call me and ask me to come in and do training. I'll be even training a church coming this Sunday. I've been out here doing a lot of workshops still, and I know Bridges is still out here. I know you're still out here,
Hmm.
and they're still out here. So we're still getting a lot of calls because the need is so great with the depression and the things that's still happening out here. And I think pastors are becoming more informed. Education is really happening now. It's something we can't walk away from. So I think that things are, when we become more aware and more educated and more informed, I think that things are happening now.
And I think that's so important because what we know is sometimes faith leaders can actually contribute to the silence by not voicing from their sacred places the need to talk about depression and suicide and anxiety and all these other things. And so I'm so grateful that through the work that you did, and really all you're doing is just taking extended vacations. You ain't retired. You're taking extended vacations, and then you right back at it. But
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for that, the work that you and I did together, and you did continue to do after I actually moved. But 134 churches doing this very important work, breaking the silence. That's amazing.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I think is so important, you and I both being parents and grandparents, is how can families start these conversations at home, especially if the parents never learn how to talk about emotions themselves. I think that is, how do we start those conversations at home with these parents? Because they were taught all those things, about, what goes on in his home stays in his home. And they were taught all these things about how to bear their emotions versus
Mhm.
being able to express those things in some homes. How would you recommend that parents start these conversations?
I think that, like we talk to our kids about everything,
Mm,
we start off a bad touch, was a good touch, was a bad
mm,
touch. We need
hmm.
to add this in there too.
Yeah.
We need to talk about it all. If we're communicating with our kids about any life issues, we need to also add this in there. We're talking about, being able to communicate about everything. Bullying. We're talking about how to bully. I was talking to my 6-year-old child, grandson, just yesterday, and he was telling me about, Granny, this guy said he wanted to fight me, and I was like, "What did you say? How
Mm,
did you respond?" He said, I told him I didn't want to fight him. I said, well, that's good. I said, what else? He said, he was telling me about this other boy at school wanted to fight me. I said, what did you tell him that we don't do that?
mm.
We don't fight each other. And did you say, why do you want to fight me? Let's talk about it. And I just gave him some strategies. I said, did you say that we may want to talk to the teacher, or let's talk about it? And I just gave him some little conversational pieces, and I almost said to him, did you know that I'm a blue belt? So But I'm just saying that these are the kind of conversations I have with him every day about what happened in school today. What was the conversations like? Who are your friends? What do you all talk about? So these are the kind of things that we have to add these pieces to them. Is anybody bullying you? Do
Mm-hmm.
you know what bullying means?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
every day his mother and I, we have all kind of conversations with him. And
Mm-hmm.
this is what parents have to do with them, starting with them really early. We start having conversations with them at 3 years old. So you're making them understand what all
Mm-hmm.
of these topics are. So nothing is new to him. And he will
Yeah.
begin to feel comfortable coming to us every day, letting us know what's going on with his life, what's
Yeah.
happening, what makes him feel uncomfortable. And so these questions and these situations are nothing that's going to be new to
Yeah.
him, that's going to be frightening to him. And he will feel open enough to come to him when something like this is happening so we can get him the help he needs right away.
I love that idea. So what you're doing is what is called prevention. You're
Hmm.
teaching them, educating him at an early age so he can know what to look for. Hey, here are some signs. Look for these things right here. If you feel this way, here those are called symptoms. Let us know how
Right,
you feel. Because we'll never know how our youth is feeling if we don't encourage them to talk to us.
right,
Instead
right.
of balling out, keeping it balled up in the inside, what you're saying, hey, express yourself and
Hmm.
let us know how
Right.
you're feeling. And it's okay to be able to do that. And I
Hmm.
think giving young people permission to talk to us about anything and everything, and that there is
That's right.
no topic off the table
That's
that
right.
we can talk about. If you're feeling suicidal, if you're feeling this way, hey, let us know. We're not going to scold you. We're not going to punish you. You're not going to be in trouble. We love you and we're here for you. And I think that affirmation to young people allows them to be able to release that stuff on the inside of them. Like you said,
That's right.
and you were saying earlier in the conversation, let it go. And I just told a group I was talking to today, if you can't let it go, learn how to manage it.
Yes.
Because there are
Yes.
some things that are just so traumatic that it's hard to let it go. But if you learn how to manage those feelings when they come up, then you
You
don't let
can.
it overwhelm you. You can
Yeah.
manage it and say, I'm feeling this way, and develop coping skills in order to manage it.
Hmm.
And that's called early intervention. When you
Yes.
recognize something's wrong and then you go get the help for it before it becomes worse, that's early intervention.
Yes.
But I think the other thing we have to make sure parents don't get scared of is treatment. You
Hmm.
know, that listen, it's okay for your kid to talk to a therapist and be able to voice out loud what's going on inside of them. And I know people talk about how medicine is overprescribed to our children, but it's not just medicine. Any professional that only uses a wrong one prong approach to support your child, I would get a second opinion
Uh-huh.
because it should be therapy, it could be medication, it could be support groups, but it needs to be a wrapped around plan that has multiple things
Uh-huh.
to
Hmm.
support that young person.
Right.
Uh, and so I know you and I can probably talk forever and ever and ever, but what I do want us to talk about is a call to compassionate action. And this book wasn't just written to inform, but I believe it was written to transform. And I've heard testimonies of
Right.
how people have read the book and been transformed. So let me ask this question as we wrap up our interview. What do you hope readers will do after reading Bottle Up Inside? What do you hope they'll do after they read the book?
I hope that they would train from it. We
Mm,
have case studies in it that are very useful. And
yes.
I am so glad that was your recommendation because it's just not reading the book and
Hmm.
utilizing the information, but you have these case studies that you recommended and wrote, uh, encouraged us to put those in there so people can practice how to do this work. And I hope that they would be able to utilize it and practice them on letting families, work with them so that they will begin to really feel comfortable with using the strategies that's
Hmm.
suggested in it and call to action.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm hoping that we just don't sit on this information. We can come out here all the time and talk about how beneficial this is, But if we never utilize it, we're not getting anywhere with it. So I was thinking as you were talking, in the Bible, God says, train up a child the way that they
Yes.
should go. And
Hmm.
they will never depart from it. And when we talk about those strategies, and I was saying that, we're doing these preventive message, train up a child. we
Yes.
the things that I was doing with my child, my grandson, when I sit him down every day when he comes from school, we sit down and we talk about what happened. That's what I do. I'm adding that into not only the things that we teach him about God and about those things. That's where we're adding that in as well. And those little videos that I've been putting up during this month, because this is May is the month of mental health awareness. That's what I put in there. Add that into train up a child as well, because we want them to begin to feel comfortable with all mental health issues, all mental health questions, because there is nothing wrong with having mental health issues.
Yeah.
What's wrong is not doing anything about it. As
Yeah.
parents, we get sad, we have issues, but it's something wrong when we don't deal with those issues. And we want people to begin to deal with those issues, to address those issues like we do with anything else that might come up in our lives. So I want people to take our book and to utilize those strategies, work with our kids. It's nothing any different than any other things that happen in our life. So that's what I want to happen.
Well, one of the things that I know we put in chapter 14 in that book, and I want to encourage folks to get it, and that is we have over 5 case studies that folks can read. And then the one thing that I'm so grateful that I was able to add to the book, and you agree that we should add in there, is the help model that I used to support my son,
Yeah.
which was, hear, engage, learn, and plan. And um, a call to action for our parents is if they can learn to hear their children,
Mhm. Mhm.
and then learn to engage their children, and then
Mhm.
also then learn from their children, then they can put together a plan that will help their
Yes.
children. And
Mhm.
so I know that model works because I used it when my son was in crisis. And so the help model, I think, is such a significant piece in there. I want to give folks just a preview of kind of they're going to get. Like chapter 1, we define mental health challenges and mental illness. And then chapter 2, we talk about the facts about depression. We even talk about trauma and a powerful risk factor dealing with the turmoil of adolescence. But I think one of the most important parts of that book that people really take away from it is when we talk about grief in chapter 4 and 5 and 6. To really learn about how to manage grief, which is something that's so important. And in chapter 7, we talk about caring adults being powerful protective factors, as well as spirituality being another protective factor in chapter 8. And then we take on this really important topic of suicide in chapter 9. And in chapter 10, we try to give parents just a perspective on dealing with youth in crisis. And then chapters 11 through 14 really is that help model, about hearing, engaging, and learning, and then planning. So, y'all, this is 14 chapters of some really rich content. And what I love about it is we were very succinct. And so it's not a long read, but it's a very powerful read. And I'm just so grateful. I want to just go over those
Yeah.
chapters with the listeners so they know, hey, this is what you're gonna get. So we want to encourage them to go pick up a copy of this book. And so I'm so excited about not only Bought Up Inside, but all the other work that you continue to do in this community. And I want to just take a moment for you to share with our listening audience any other advice that you would share with them or any other call to actions that you may have.
Yes, I want to make sure that people understand we did this book it's called Bottle Up Inside, African American Teens in Depression. But when you look at the book is for everybody. I have a copy
Hmm.
here. It's for in when you look at the it's all races are inside of the bottle.
Hmm.
So when we first started it, we did target. But as we were writing the book, we realized that everybody was being affected. And so we don't want you to think it doesn't apply to everybody because it really does. All the symptoms, everything. But the book can be found at Amazon or any place where you can order it anywhere. So make sure that you pick it up. It's helpful for anybody who needs it. Depression is real, and it's really important right now because the world is in one of the most
Mm-hmm.
chaotic situations, probably worse than where we were,
Mm-hmm.
probably almost similar to the pandemic because
Mm-hmm.
so many people don't even know from day to day if they're going to be laid off, they're losing their
Mm-hmm.
homes, they're losing their houses. We don't know what's happening with Medicare, Medicaid, SNAP benefits, people middle class, low class, high class. We don't know what's going on in the world today. You don't know if you get on an airplane, if you're going to be safe getting off, or they blinking off in the sky. I mean, just stay prayerful, but understand depression and how it's affecting us every single day with food prices. We just don't know. Stay prayerful, but also understand depression and know how to deal with the signs and symptoms and talk to somebody to make sure that you can handle whatever's happening in your life and know that it can be dealt with in a very succinct way.
Yeah, you just really just described so much of the anxiety and the uncertainty people in this country are experiencing right now, and not only this country, but the world. And I remember somebody asking me, "Is this book only for black teens?" And I said, "Absolutely not." I said the reason why it was written specifically is there's not enough resources out there
Mhm.
in black and brown communities, and so we wrote specific to that community, but the principles apply to anybody.
Mhm.
And so I want to let people know this isn't just for one particular group, but it's for anybody who just wants some tips on how to manage depression and grief and suicide and these different things here. Well, everybody, you have been listening to another episode of the Salt Talk with Jermaine Alberty, and let this be your invitation to check in and speak up and create safe spaces for our young people. And if you are a parent, educator, a faith leader, I want you to start the conversation. If you are a teen, know that you are seen, that you are loved, and that you are never alone. So I want to encourage y'all to grab your copy of the book Bought Up Inside African American Teens and Depression and let it open up a new chapter of healing. I want to thank you, Rose, for being here and for being a voice of courage and compassion. And thank you so much for doing this interview. And until next time, you all stay seasoned, you all stay bold, stay compassionate. This is the Salt Talk with Jermaine Howard.
Thank you.